Today we're trying to do some tags with every single cheap graffiti marker that they sell on the Temu app to see if they're any good.
If you guys were around on the channel last year, Temu kept challenging us to try out more and more of their graffiti products. And today we are going to be completing that task by testing out every single graffiti marker that they have on the Temu app. What we've already tested are their graffiti mops, and then we tried out their permanent staining ink to see if they had any good inks for those graffiti mops. And then after that, we even tested out their liquid chromes in a mop to see how they would tag. And all of those were super cheap, partly because whenever Temu sponsors a video like this, they throw a coupon code your way for 90% off. If you're new to the Temu app, you can download it from the description and put in my code, get that 90% off and a $100 coupon bundle. But in all of those tagging tests, what I was trying to find out was, are these mops, are these markers actually good quality for graffiti? Because it doesn't matter how cheap they are if they don't work for tagging. So today I'll be showing you all of the markers that Temu sent us over to test out in a tagging test, and then we will be doing that tagging test on glass, polyplastic, finished wood, all the surfaces that our graffiti markers love to tag on. And that way at the end, after having tried out all the graffiti mops and markers on the Temu app, I can tell you, are they worth picking up and trying out for yourself? So here's what they sent over. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Okay, I moved that bag out of the way. It's down here, because otherwise you can't see shit. So in case you didn't know, you can pretty much get almost anything on the Temu site, and that was one of the things I wanted to emphasize here, I guess. So they sent over a few things which kind of show that. Some kind of hexagonal sound panel things here. And you know what, we asked them to send over some more sound panels. If you don't know what sound panels are, now you know. Random microphone in here as well. But in terms of the markers, here's what we got. I am afraid to open this because there is about 100 mini Cuddy style mops in here. Here are these mops. They don't have nibs, but I wanted to pick these up because I have something I want to try out in them. And I'm hoping I can find nibs that work on these. And these. So we had already picked up many of the graffiti markers on their site, but these are basically all the sizes that we don't yet have. This one I would say is about a 5 to 8 millimeter bullet tip. It has the refill from the back system. That's quite nice. Another one here, I would call that a pretty standard 8 millimeter chisel tip. All of these have the valve actuation system, very standard. You have some as small as what I would say is 1 millimeter here, actually 2, it's gotta be a 2. We've got the good old standard 15 millimeter chisel tip here. This one's gotta be a favorite size of mine. I don't know if this is like a 5 or a 6. You know what, this has gotta be the 8. This is the 8 millimeter chisel tip. The one before I was saying is an 8 is a 10, I believe. That's gotta be AM. So 10's kind of a rarer size to see, that's nice. And something in between here, we have a 30 millimeter, I believe. Refill from the back system on that as well. And one thing they sent over last time as well, all of these chisel tip sizes, which include a 50 millimeter. Now, every time Temu sponsors a video like this, they give me a coupon code that gets any of you guys who haven't used their app before 90% off your first order, as well as a $100 coupon bundle. All you have to do is download the app from the first link in the description, and step 2, search my code, which is right on screen in the search bar to get your coupon bundle. That's it. They do price adjustments for 30 days if something goes on sale after you buy it. Free returns up to 90 days. So if you're interested, it's a pretty risk-free way to try their app out. But right now, what we have here is pretty much every single possible nib size you can get from the Temu app, and we are about to tag test every single one of them. So let's get to it. Word of advice, don't forget to put your valve system back in. Just saying. I just want to say it's very rare to find a 6mm chisel tip. It's basically square. Not a lot of brands out there are making something like this, so that's kind of cool. Okay, so first thing is first, we're gonna do just a simple line test with every single one of these, simply because we need to know that they write. A side benefit of that though is you're gonna get to see the difference between every single chisel tip size out there and bullet tip size. We've got 10 different sizes here, and I'll tell you what sizes are which as we lay them down. So let's get to it. So on screen, you're gonna see each size pop up as we do a line test with it. For those of you who haven't really used chisel tips too extensively, this is gonna be a great opportunity to see just how the various sizes of bullets and chisels look compared to each other. You can really get a feel for kind of what size you're gonna wanna write with these different tools. I will say with each of the bullet tips there, they all felt like they had very dense nibs, so be really careful what you fill them with. Any thicker paint is not going to flow through those. With these mid-sized chisels, I want you to take a look at just kind of the shape of each of those chisel tips, because the proportions are a little bit different from east to west, if you will. Or from the wide axis to the narrow axis, I suppose you could say as well. So that's the standard 15mm right there. And as we get to this 30mm, this is one of the only ones that actually had some issues with it. I found it juiced up really nice, but the flow was kind of leaky. I think the T-shaped chisel nib just wasn't quite big enough to fill out the area there in the valve. But the 30, very nice. The T-shapes juiced up really, really well also. And second thing we're going to do here, we're just going to see, how do these feel to write with? Are they usable? That way at the end I can tell you, should you be picking these up and trying them out for yourself? So let's get to it. We're gonna wait till later to do the 50mm, but right now you can see how the 30 compares to the 15. So starting our tagging test, I'm gonna do something helpful for you guys. I'm gonna try and put labels on screen so that you can see the different size nibs when I'm writing two tags next to each other, because that way you can kind of compare the sizes visually. For me, I found it was actually, I mean, I've never been a master with chisel tips by any means, but having to switch sizes like that for every other tag, you have to adjust your writing style, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Definitely something different. And that being said, it's kind of rare that you see packs of all of the chisel tip sizes together like we were able to pick up. So that's one nice thing about these kind of value packs, I guess. I do have to say though, we started with that 30mm and continued on from there, going down. The 30mm and the 50mm are the two sizes that kind of had some problems. 30mm was specifically the valve system. It seemed to not be exactly up to par. It was just leaky enough that it was an issue. And the 50, the valve totally fine, but you'll see the issue when we get to it. In terms of how the nibs felt, I will say actually all of the nibs felt really good. They did kind of feel a little bit worse the smaller the nib got, specifically the bullet tip nibs I found. They seem to be a strange density for bullet tip nibs. Usually with bullet tip nibs, I like them to be a little softer. Admittedly, that's a personal preference, but the bullet tip nibs, all of them were very, very hard. Including that kind of like 6mm one, which I was excited about because it's very similar to the OTR 4001, but the nib was much harder. That could change with a bit of a longer break-in period, hard to tell. As far as those kind of mid sizes went, like the 6mm chisel, that was almost that box shaped chisel or the square chisel, that one was super, super nice to write with. I felt like it was a little bit softer than the other ones. The 7mm standard angle chisel tip size, also very soft, really, really nice to write with. And you know what, the 10mm as well. It's a rare size to see. It was quite nice to write with. The 8's always been a favorite of mine, but all of those kind of mid sizes, I did really enjoy using those, despite personally not being a master with those chisel tip sizes and not really being able to make the most of, you know, the chisel tip sharp cuts and all of that. It's not something I practice as much. So in terms of the nibs, in summary, I don't think there were any nibs that really had any major problems. The flow through all of the nibs, perfectly fine. All of them saturated really, really quickly, and except for that 30mm, there wasn't any leakage at all. In case you're wondering, I'm using inks in all of these sizes. If you were to use paints in these, you would have to be careful. Just like with any other chisel tip or bullet tip markers, can the paint flow through those nibs? Is the paint pigmentation and the paint formula thin enough to pass through that nib? So that would be something to watch out for if you're going to be putting paints in these specifically. Alright, I'll stop making you guys wait for it. I just want to say though that when I juiced the nib up for this thing was about twice as full. So almost half of the liquid that we put in there is in the nib. That's how much liquid these things hold. And now my nib is on the floor. Fair to say the nib on this is a little loose. Keep that in mind. 50mm specifically here, I do think it's very well put together. That being said, the nib's a little loose. We don't love that. That's the kind of thing that, like, when you're trying to pop the cap off, the nib will fall out. That just gets really annoying, especially if you're trying to use these outdoors in the more natural environment, right? You don't want to have to be uncapping and then trying to find your nib on the ground, especially if it's dark. Just not ideal. Writing specifically on wood. Again, all of the nibs, they felt good for that. I like a little bit of resistance. That finished wood gave that little bit of resistance to me, especially with, again, kind of those mid sizes that seem to have slightly softer nibs. Those felt the best to me. I did less tagging with the bullet tips, especially the really small ones, just because that's not exactly the practical use of them for most of you out there. But even those, the flow, perfectly fine. Just like I said, the nibs are a little bit tougher. They do last longer when they're tougher like that, but usually with the denser nibs, you have to be a bit more careful about what kind of thing you're putting inside them as well, because you don't want to clog them, mess up the valve system, and have to fix all that. Glass as well, you know, everything feels great on glass, but I just used the 15mm there in the red for a few tags, and then the 10mm, so that's the difference between the 15 and the 10 that you're seeing side by side there pretty much. Felt really nice, as they do on glass. When you're using chisel tips on surfaces as smooth as these polyplastics and the glass, you don't really need to pump them while you're writing, which can be really nice. As long as that nib is juiced up ahead of time, you're totally fine to just write with it normally. A few of the tags, like the Dare tag, I just compressed the nib the whole time I was writing there. Same thing with the Xiao tag on the finished wood there. Just trying to keep that nib compressed, see how they write. They felt really good. Sometimes with weaker valve systems, you do get kind of where you start throwing your hands around and then ink starts to fly off of the nibs as well. Didn't get that with those sizes. That was nice. I suspect if I had been trying to write like that with the 50, there might have been some messiness there, but we don't know for sure. But I'm hoping getting to see all these different sizes kind of side by side has helped you guys figure out what kind of chisel tips do I want to try out. But that being said, let me tell you as a final word, if I think these chisel tips are worth picking up when you have so many options out there, right? Like, there's so many brands that have been out there for a long time. Should you be trying specifically these much cheaper options out? Is there any value there? So 10 different nib sizes. Are any of them any good? Should you try them out? Well, the one thing I can say for all of them is that they are functional. The exception to that would be the 30, just because it was leaky from the start. I don't know if it's specifically the valve system, or sometimes you get a nib that is just not quite the right size. So that could be the issue there. But the rest of these, perfectly functional markers. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't see much, if any, quality difference between this and other plastic body chisel tip markers. As far as these go in terms of value, which if we're defining value as usage per price unit, then these have a lot of value to them. They're cheap. They're even cheaper if you do download the Temu app and enter my code, which is on screen, in their search bar to get 90% off on your first order. You can pick some of these up. It's a cheap way to try them out. And you know what? I honestly don't know where else you would get a 6mm size like this. This one was a pleasure to use, actually. And if you want to see how all of the mop sizes specifically perform, when we did our tagging test there of all the mops we could pick up on Temu, you can click that video on screen right now. I will see you over there soon. Until then, peace.